Mm-hmm.
Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sleep Deprived. I'm Tony.
I'm Edith.
Why can't we ever have a normal intro?
Because we're not normal people.
I like that. And I like that a lot. That's good. I like that.
Okay.
It reminds me of, have you ever seen The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo?
No.
So The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is about a girl who is a very, very skilled computer hacker. And she joins forces with this detective, and they try to find this family drama crime story. But there's a scene in... Okay, hold on. Let me back up. Her name is Elizabeth. Her name is Elizabeth.
Okay.
And she works for this high-tech computer engineering company. And she goes to therapy. She goes to this shrink that gives her money every couple weeks. Okay? Because that's from her will, or from a will of a lady she used to take care of. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But I said shrink. It's a therapist. But the therapist is not a good guy. He is a pervert. He does things to her so that she can get the money. And one day he does something very terrible to her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I can't believe you did that. I just need my allowance, my money. It's my money. And the therapist is like, well, it's yours. You can come get it whenever. You just gotta do things for me. But she's smart. So the last time that he did something to her, she had it recording secretly in a backpack over here. And then one day she comes over and she tases his ass. And she ties him up to the bed, and she's walking around. She has this big monologue, and she's like, I walk around day to day trying to pretend that I'm not insane, that I don't need therapy, I'm not crazy, I don't need medicine, and I don't need money from you. And then she's like, but you know what? And she looks into the camera. She's like, I am insane. And she tattoos rapist pig on his chest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bad bitch.
She's a bad bitch. So you know what? We are not normal. Anyway, all right. On this episode, we're going to go in deep and dark like my espresso. This episode is focused on depression. Depression is, in my opinion, a disease with a biological basis. I do consider it a disease because I have suffered from it. Edith has suffered from it. Many of my friends and many people that I know that I care about have suffered from it. It is a global epidemic, even worse or as bad as the one going around right now. And there is a cure for it. I do believe there is a cure for it, but it's not the same for everyone. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Edith! What is depression? What is depression in your opinion, Edith?
Depression?
Oh, shit.
Oh,
sorry.
Fuck no.
Go.
Depression doesn't look the same on everyone.
Ooh.
So it's hard to explain because it's different for everyone.
Do you know who Chester Bennington is?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see the last video of Chester alive?
Where he's like laughing.
He's laughing his ass off with his kids.
And he was depressed.
Hours before he took his own life. So, depression can look like a sad face. I'm sorry. Depression can look like a happy face in disguise. So, ask. It never hurts to ask. I remember I saw... I don't know where I read it. I don't know where I saw this. Maybe, I don't know if it's even real, but I remember seeing it somewhere. It's a story of a kid who's walking through the city. He's walking through the mall. We don't know where he's going, but he's crying. He passes by the mailman. He passes by people just walking on the street. He passes by an ice cream shop. And then he finally gets to where he was going, and it was a bridge. And he jumps off of the bridge, crying. When they pulled his body from the riverbed, they found a note in his pocket saying, "If no one stops me to ask why I'm crying, I will reach my destination and I will jump." And then everyone was like, "Dang." So you never know who's going through it. You never know what they're going through. So just be nice to people and ask. Every time I get into Edith's car, she's like, "How are we doing?" And every time she gets into my car, I'm like, "Close the door."
Yeah.
So anyway, Edith kind of hit it on the nail of the head. Depression is a disease. It's
mostly it's on the inside.
It's on the inside, and it doesn't really tend to manifest itself physically, publicly.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Like I mean I know that people don't want the ones that care about them to know that they're suffering, because I think it makes. Imagine this. Imagine you tell your mom that you are sad. How do you think that would make her feel?
For my mom, it would make her. She would be like, "What happened?" She would be like, "Oh, what can I do?"
And then if you said nothing,
then she's gonna feel useless.
Yes. I personally think that a lot of people have trouble admitting it and haven't experienced it because I don't want others to let my parents especially to let them know that they've failed. Because that's probably one of the worst feelings ever. Like I can't take care of my kid. Taking care of your kid doesn't mean feeding them, doesn't mean putting them in the best schools. It doesn't mean clothing them. It means taking care of their mental well-being. You know, a kid wakes up from a nightmare. What's the first thing the parents are going to tell them? It's like, "Mommy, I had a nightmare. What's the first thing the parents are going to tell them?
You're fine.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's my dad.
They're like, "You're fine. It was just a dream." You know what I would do? Especially at such a young age, I would encourage them. I said, "Hey, when you have bad thinking, the dreams are going to be bad. Like, when you have bad thinking, you're going to have bad dreams. So during the day, have good thinking, and you'll have good dreams." And to me, that's always meant everything starts at a young age. Edith, we've talked about this in early episodes. We've talked about it in previous episodes and early episodes. We've talked about it before, is what I'm trying to say. And everything starts with youth. Everything starts from the cradle to the grave. You know, that's what DMX said that. He said that. Huh? My dogs. Cradle to the grave. When if you start off treating your plant like a piece of shit, it's gonna grow up to be a piece of shit, you know? And die. Yes. Either at the hands of life or at the hands of their own. So if you are able to channel positive reinforcement, good thinking, and good qualities into your child at an early age, I think you can cure depression. My best friend, he has a 4-year-old, okay? I hope it's 4. If not, I feel like a terrible uncle. A 4-year-old that I see him raising completely different than what I've experienced other people raising their kids. Very, very particular type of encouragement, thinking. It's like, no, I don't say this around her because it might affect her later. Oh, I don't feed her this because I don't want her to develop that. Or if she drops a toy, very, very acute. And a lot of people will look at him and say, she's just a kid. Like, let her grow up.
Mm-mm.
No. everything counts. Everything sticks, and everything has a, what's it called? The river. When you throw a stone in the river, it makes a ripple. A ripple effect.
Yes.
It has a ripple effect.
Exactly.
Do you know the thing about the butterfly and the hurricane?
No.
Well, the butterfly and the hurricane, if a butterfly flaps its wings differently in, Florida, then that little wave of air that came from it goes and makes its way across the country to this ocean and changes the temperature and causes a hurricane. Everything you do to and for your child has an effect on its brain and how it's going to develop and how it's going to grow up thinking about life around it. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. What is your experience with depression, Edith? Ladies first. I'll let you let you into it. What caused it? What was your earliest memory of being just so sad and down in the dumps?
When my uncle passed away. I was like 10, maybe 9, 10. He passed away from colon cancer. He was super young. He was like barely in his 30s. And it happened fast. And that was like my first death.
Like death in the family?
Yeah. And it was especially going to his funeral, because that was my first funeral, and it was open casket.
Yikes.
So I had to see him. And then it was like, what do you mean he's dead? Like, he's gone? Like, for realsies?
Like, he's right there. What are you talking about?
Yes. And then seeing, like, my family be depressed, I'm like, whoa. Like, if I didn't know it was depression, I just felt sad.
Ooh, you don't know what it is, but you have it.
Yep. And then a few
How old
years
were you?
later...
How old were you?
Like 9-ish. So it's like, I was a happy kid for the most part. A few years later, my other uncle died.
Oh, man.
And it's like, again. So I was like, okay, it's fine. I'm sad, whatever. Then my grandpa died a few years later. And I was like, oh my God. Then my grandma died.
Do you think that impacted your faith?
Yes.
I know we talked about it.
Because I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But it was like every year, it was like, okay, someone else is next.
Do you think you became numb?
Yeah,
Like
of.
People dying stopped affecting you?
At first, it was like, it hit me hard, but then I was like, whatever. Like at the funeral, it would be like, okay. Yeah.
So it was a collection of people that you cared about.
Yeah, we were super close. It wasn't just like,
Like, a distant Theo or whatever. It was your uncle, your...
And I don't think my family handled everything. They never taught me really how to, like, grieve and how to deal with emotions.
Was it awkward?
Yeah, because I could tell everyone was sad, but...
No one knew how to...
Everyone was just, like, dealing with it on their own.
Like, you felt weird...
Especially my dad.
You felt weird turning on the TV to watch something funny?
Yeah.
Why your dad? Why'd you say your dad?
Because he's, the big, tough Mexican pop.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
The only time I saw him cry was when his mom died, my grandma. I heard him crying. But then he just snapped out of it. And he was like, okay, I gotta go to Mexico.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy.
I know, yeah, it's not healthy because you... Yeah, but okay, I think it's... Okay. Our parents and grandparents grew up very differently than we did.
Yeah.
So if they were to get sad, I don't think it would be because of... I don't want to say not depression, but like for natural reasons. Like, oh, I'm sad because... my Theo passed away, or I'm sad because my son passed away. I don't think they'd get in depression of comparing themselves to hundreds of Instagram users. You know what I mean? I don't think that would happen. So for your dad, my dad, because I relate, or anyone else that has a parent that kind of holds it in, for them to get sad, they have that resilience where they can bounce back, and it's like, okay, like I'm sad, I grieved, and now I gotta go back to the only thing I ever knew, which is just working and going back to a normal lifestyle and try to be there, you know, versus you know, today's youth, where a majority of depression comes from comparison.
Yeah.
A majority of depression comes from FOMA. You know what FOMA is?
Fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out, you know.
Yeah.
And for people who have lost loved ones because of depression, the truth is, I mean, if you don't know why they felt they didn't belong, the truth is no one's ever gonna really know, and that's why you have to ask before, like, you lose them. That's why it's important to ask, how's your day going? Be nice to people. Because maybe you have a friend whose parents look okay, but the dad's secretly depressed. And maybe it takes all it takes is that one little compliment or criticism for them to make that final decision.
Yep.
So maybe like the dad's really like on the edge or on the fence, and he does one little thing, and someone else is like, hey man, I really like the way you did that, or I really like how you did this, or I really like your whatever the hell. And he's like, wow, you know, that means a lot. I didn't know it meant anything to anyone. And then boom, they turn their life around.
Yeah.
Or you go the other way, where he's on the fence, he's got one foot out the door, and then all it takes is this one the boss to say, look man, you fucked up again. Like, if it happens again, I have to let you go. And he's like, you know what? Don't worry about it. And then he, you know, takes his life. You know, you have to be considerate, and you have to show, what's the word, sympathy towards others, because you never know when the last time you're going to see them is. So that's important. For me, the first time I remember being depressed was when I was 16. I think I was between the age of 15 and 16. It was the story of my father. My mom, she used to always make jokes how I'm like Superman. And it was things that I never really understood why they were different than other people. I never understood why my dad had a different last name than my mom. I never understood why my brother had a different last name than me. And I just never understood that. So, and my mom would always say, Mijo, you have these things that are in your DNA that make you different than the rest of us. And you have these abilities, but you don't know where they're from. It kind of makes you like Superman. So she always called me my little Superman or whatever. And then one day, out of nowhere, out of the blue, out of complete curiosity, I texted my tia. And I said, hey tia, I just wanted to know. It wasn't anything serious. I just wanted to know. And I texted her, I said, hey tia, who was there when I was born? And then she replies back saying, oh, mijo, you have to ask your mom, because...
because she's not going to tell you.
Because, that's none of... I don't know, you got to ask you got to ask your mama. And I was like, what the fuck? Okay, whatever. And then, and my dad walked into the room, and I was like, oh, I'll just ask him. And I was like, hey, Dad, like, in the hospital, like, who was there when I was born? And he was like, oh, well, you know, your grandma and your mom was there, obviously, and I was in the Navy. And I was like, okay. What? He was like, yeah. And then he walked out of the room crying. And I'm like, okay, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And he ended up leaving that night. He didn't like walk out. He didn't walk out.
He just left for the night.
Yet. He just left to go, I don't know. He just left.
Okay.
And then I go into the kitchen and I was like, hey mom, what's going on? Why is everyone acting weird? Who was there when I was born? She was like, mijo, it's time to
have a talk.
It's time to have a talk. And she told me that when she was in college, she met this guy and he was an asshole and she ended up getting pregnant and she didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, I'm gonna have this baby. Mm-hmm. She said that she loved this guy so much, but he was such an asshole. She didn't know what to do with all that love. So she said she was gonna channel it to her tummy. And from that love came me.
Oh God.
But it was a very confusing time for me because not only did I just finish, or I was like in the middle of puberty, which is like the worst time to fuck with a teenager. I had all these hormones, these growth things going on, and then to be told that your life is a lie, I felt so like lost. My identity was, I don't know who I was or what I wanted to be. At that moment when she said I come from a different man, I felt like the blood that ran in my veins wasn't my own. I remember sitting at that table with my emo hair and my anchor blue pants, and I remember looking at my hands and looking at the veins, and I was like, this blood is not my own. And it scared me, dude. It scared me so much, and I was crying. I was like, I don't know who I am. I've lost a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, and my body just felt weird, like I didn't belong in my body. And like my face, the way I looked, it just felt like it wasn't me, and I was losing grasps of reality, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know who I am anymore. That was the first time I really felt depressed and lost in life and just floating through space like a dust.
Wow. That's sad.
It was sad, but my mom, she's, being the genius that she is, I was like, I don't know what to do. I was like going into a panic, like, I don't know what to do. And she was like, mijo, why don't you call your dad? Call your dad and tell him everything that happened. Mm-hmm. Tell him that you love him. And da-da-da. And then she started explaining that, anyone can have a kid and walk out. Because my dad has a history of family members that his brother has like a bunch of kids that he left everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I know I hear stories of people like divorce and I think it hit me so hard because this is the shit you hear about only in movies.
Yeah.
Like in movies and in TV shows where like, oh, stepdad and I was like, and all of a sudden, boom, it hit my home. And I am those people in the movies now. Mm-hmm. So she's like, call your dad because he stood up, step up to the plate. He stepped up to the plate. He raised you. He showed you how to tie your shoe. He showed you how to shoot a basketball, how to ride a bike. He cares about you and he loves you. And I was like, okay. So I called him and I was like, hey dad, like mom told me everything, but like you're my dad and I love you and you raised me and she told me that, the real dad left and that's not you and you were important to me and blah, 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 blah. And then, like, my grandma called me. She's like, mijo, like, she told me the same thing. She's like, your dad, in Spanish, my grandma told me, like, your dad is a ding-dong. He's an idiot. But he stepped up to the plate, dude. Like, he put food on the table. He put you guys in a home. He takes you to baseball games. He does the dad thing pretty well. So to that, you owe him the respect of calling him dad. And I was like crying, dude. I was a fucking mess, bro. I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, man. So I mean, fuck, dude. Those were really heavy years. Those were like My Chemical Romance days and emo and like, dude, it was like the full emo experience. Woo! Man, but it was for real, like, oof. How did you, okay, I guess we'll move on to the next topic. How did you deal with all that shit, Edith? How did you deal with handling family members that move on?
I think that's where I developed dark humor. I'm just laughing about it, honestly.
Interesting.
Because I didn't realize how depressed I was until, like, you tell other people about your life and they're like, damn. And I'm just like, what?
It's normal. That's why I asked if you became numb to everything.
Yeah. And I'll be like, yeah, people just die in my family. It's just, you know.
It's the norm.
But then my dad finally, I bitched at him for years for a dog. And he got me my first puppy. And that helped a lot. Because I got my little puppy and we became like besties. And people still kept dying after that. So he was like my rock.
Oh, I see.
It would be like funeral.
The rock.
It'd be like funeral, come home,
puppy.
Cry, puppy.
Yes. There's another episode we did. Was it self-care?
Maybe.
Oh, it is self-care. So if you haven't watched self-care, we go into why animals, or we go into like the science of how animals can smell the chemical imbalance of you going through shit.
And they can.
And they can.
They
so
can see it.
Check it out. But, okay, so I heard a quote from a movie called The Flight of the Phoenix. And there's a quote in there. Basically, another movie reference. We're going to have an episode on movies. But in The Flight of the Phoenix, it's a crew of people that crash land in the middle of like the desert. And they're in like the Middle East somewhere. And they're like panicking, like, oh, what are we gonna do? We're gonna die. And they become scared and they become like, fuck, we're gonna die here. Mm-hmm. And but there's this one cat that like he's always walking around, he's like doing things and blah 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 blah. He's like, hey, stop building shit. You don't know what you're doing. And then he tells homeboy like, hey man, look, all a man ever wants in life is to be loved. And if you can't give him that, for God's sakes, give him something to do. And that I saw that at like 10 years old, but to me it really like resonated. And I'm like, yeah, there's something about doing things, staying busy, that distracts the mind. What does mama do every once in a while to distract herself?
Mama. What do you mean? Spa day.
Wait. Are you talking about yourself?
Mama?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, I thought you thought I was referring to you as mama. Like, what does mama do to take care of herself, girl?
No.
No, I meant yo mama, your mother. She.
Oh yeah,
She cleans.
She does, or okay. She sews.
There you go. Something to do.
Yeah.
I've read multiple articles, tons of books, and have seen plenty of movies. And for those of you that think like, oh, that's a movie. No. Movies are magic. Movies come from books, they come from stories, and they come from experiences. Mm-hmm. So they are just as real as your everyday science article, okay? Anyway.
Wow.
Where people are so lost and someone just says, hey, can you help me paint the house? And they're like, okay. And many times, I even heard this in another podcast where for Thanksgiving, this guy that's on the podcast, he goes to different people that he sees on the streets, like homeless people, and instead of giving them money, instead of buying them food, he asks them to do something for him. Mm-hmm. Because he believes it gives them a brand new sense of purpose.
Yeah, like, hey, I earned it.
Yes, like, hey, I earned this. So, and I think that is 10 times more applicable to someone that is going through depression. It's like, hey, don't send them a fucking meme. Like I've seen this where people have like a picture of Will Smith, and then it'll just be like some random quote. Like, what does that have to do with Will Smith? What does that have to do with whatever the hell? Like, give them something to do. Mm-hmm. You know, ask. I had a good friend. I won't name her, but like a couple weeks ago, we met up at the park down the street, and she says that, you know, my sister, she's really lost. She's like, I'm gonna move out with my boyfriend, but she's like 17, and my parents don't know how to talk to her, so it makes her feel lost. And I said, why don't you ask your sister to do things with you / for you? You know, a man that feels like he doesn't have any purpose in life, the more that you ask them to help, like, hey, can you help me with something real quick? Or help me like with a project I'm working on. That feeling of being needed, that feeling of being asked to do a favor for someone, it's like, wow, they really need me. And then when it's done, and you're like, oh man, thank you so much. Like, I couldn't have done it without you. Oh man. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine the feeling that they would get from that?
Yeah.
Like, so going back to that homeless example, what he would do was he asked them to pray for him. Aww. He asked homeless people, like, hey man, like, oh, you know, make up, like, oh, you know, I'm like really struggling right now. Can you pray for me? And the homeless people are like me? What? Like, why? And I only did this once, like, cause it takes guts. It takes guts. And I did it. Like, I went up to this I was at the metro, and homeboy's like, hey man, like, can you spare some change? And I was like, oh shit, am I gonna do it? All right, I'm gonna do it. And I was like, oh hey man, you know what? Like, perfect timing. I need your help. And I said, can you do me a favor? Can you pray for me? Because, you know, school and whatever. And he's like this, you know, very tall, jolly black man. And he's like, oh, brother, like what? Of course. And he went into like God, and like, he was like, man, the Lord gonna take everything, care for it, blah, 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 blah. He had like this like walk, like he like wobbled, and he had like his coat around his hand. And I was like, yeah, man, can you just pray for me? Because, like, I'm on the Met, I'm going to school, and I just want to I just gave him whatever. And he was like, and he went for it, bro. He was like, God help this brother right here, man. And he was like, what's your name, bro? And I'm like, oh, my name's Tony. He's like, God look after Tony, man. He the man right here. He the man. He got it going on. God, you got to watch him, bro. And I was like... And I was like, hey, thanks, man. Like, that really meant a lot, what you did. And he was like, anytime, brother, anytime. And he moved on, and I don't know where he's at now, but I like to think I gave him that sense of purpose.
You did. I'm sure you did.
Hopefully, because, I mean, who asks that of people?
Yeah.
It's like when you go through drive-thru and the people in front of you had already bought your food.
Yeah.
Has that happened to you?
When I used to work at McDonald's, it would happen all the time. It hasn't happened to me, though.
How did it affect you?
I would always be surprised. I'd be like, wait, you want to pay for their food? And they'll be like, yeah. And I'll be like, you know, it's like $20, right?
They're like, oh, in that case, let's pay for the people behind them, too.
And they'll be like, no, yeah. And I'll be like, oh, that's nice.
Interesting.
And then when the other person would pull up, and I'll be like, hey, like, they paid for your food. You're good.
What would they say?
And they would just be like, what?
Wow.
Like, they couldn't believe it. And then they would look so happy.
Yeah.
Some would think it was a joke, like, oh.
Like, no, take the money.
And I'll be like, no, like, you're good. Look, here's your receipt.
Dang. See, those are the little things that matter.
Yeah.
Imagine being in your car and saying, like, fuck, dude, today's gonna be, like, the worst day. Like, I already left the house. Mom's bitching, and my girlfriend, she's bitching, and I'm going to this job I hate. Blah, blah, blah. Your order's been taken care of.
Oh.
You're like, what? Excuse me?
Yeah, the people ahead of you, they paid for your food.
Yep.
You're like, is this a joke?
Oh, I don't get paid enough to make jokes like this.
Hell nah.
Just the nice little things like that. Those make all the difference. But
Yeah.
So I guess, when was the next time or the most recent time you went into like a state of depression? Or have you recovered? Are you fully happy about life?
One of my closest friends at the time, I'll say his name because he's whatever, Leonard.
Leonardo.
Yes. We were very close. I did have a crush on him for like the longest time. He was
You hear that, buddy?
cute.
You got it going on.
His mom was in the army, and you know how when you're like an army kid, you move everywhere. You're always jumping from school to school because your mama gets like relocated. And then you would never think he was depressed. He was like a flirt. He loved like flirting with girls, and he would always but he was like the funny, stupid flirt.
He wasn't like, hey girl, look at my biceps.
No. Like every time he would see me at school, he would like make a scene like, oh, here comes Edith, and he would like bow down. Like he was
Yikes.
like, he was
I
just
need this guy in my
stupid.
life.
And then finally, the last time I saw him, he on Facebook, he told me like, oh, I have to move again, and like I'm tired of moving over and over. Because like every year he would either go to our school or he would go to Kentucky to some school there. And then I was just like, because I didn't know, so I was like, you're gonna be fine, like just just hang in there. Like, you're Leonard, you can make friends. You cute. And then, like maybe a few days later, like midnight, I get a call from my other friend, and then he's like, oh, Leonard's gone.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, what do you mean? And I was like, no, he's gone. And I knew his cousins, because I went to school with them too. And I called them, and I was like, is it true? And then she was crying. She was like, yeah, like he killed himself.
Dang.
And I was like, what do you mean? And I went on Facebook and asked his mom, which I never talked to her until like that night. I was like, hey, Mrs., is it true? And she was like, yeah, Mija, I'm sorry.
It's interesting that she apologizes to you.
I know. She's so sweet. And I was just like, what do you mean? And then the next day, like seeing their cousins crying, I was like, damn, it's real.
Was this during or after your family, like all those tragedies?
It was after. After.
Do you think it like prepped you?
But this was the first time my friend died.
Oh.
Not family.
Oh.
So this was different. So it hit me hard. Because I was like, hey.
Do you think having had a lot of relatives that had passed prepped you at all?
This was the first suicide.
Oh, okay.
I've never dealt with suicide before.
Yeah.
So I was like thinking about like our last convo, like, oh, did I mess up? Like, was he asking for help maybe? Because all I said was like, hang in there, like you're gonna be fine.
Like, did I do enough?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
Because I told him, you're gonna make friends, you're Leonard, you're fine. And it was weird.
That is crazy.
Yep.
I can relate. When I graduated high school, okay, let's back it up actually. When I was in middle school, I remember there was this kid that the girl I was dating, I was like in 7th grade, okay? But the girl that I was with,
Player.
she was always kicking it and hanging out with this kid named Damien.
Ugh.
Wait. But I was like, what the heck? Like, you're my girlfriend, but she, like, puts her arm into, like, Damien's arm, and she's like, hey. Or if there's, like, people dancing or whatever on the TV, she's like, hey, look, Damien, that's me and you. And I was like, oh whatever. And then in 8th grade, I started kicking it with this new group, and that included Damien. And we ended up being really good friends. We would, like, skate together. We would, like, meet up, and I invited him to, like, my birthday parties. He made me a CD of music to play at my birthday parties. And a lot of that shit is the music I listen to today.
Oh.
So, I mean, that CD had, like, The Used, Linkin Park, The Story of the Year. It had, like, Atreyu, a bunch of, like, screamo bands. A bunch of emo bands, as people would put it. From first to last, you name it. So, a lot of that CD was, like, the seed of my teenage life, or whatever you want to put it. And then we kept in contact. He went to Rancho, I went to Etowanda. And then when we graduated, he would stop by my house randomly sometimes. So, like, once a year, I knew to expect him at the door. And the last time I saw him was at my old house. He stopped by with my friend Brad. And I was like, what the fuck, bro? Like, what's up, dude? He was tall as shit. And he's like, yeah, man, like, I'm just kicking it. And the first thing he does is cup check me. And I was like, oh, Damien.
That's what you men do.
Good to see you, bro. And then we kicked it, like, the whole day. And then he was walking home with Brad. And I was like, hey, I'll, like, walk with you guys up to, like, Baseline or whatever. And I'll just skate back down. And then that was the last time I saw him. But I always saw him on, like, Instagram and Facebook. And I remember after high school, like, my first year of Chafee, I was on a date with this girl. I guess her name doesn't matter, whatever.
Yeah.
But we were on a date, we went to Victoria Gardens, and the date was over, and I get a text from my friend Paul. And Paul was like, hey man, Damien's dead. And I'm like, and I said, like, what do you mean? And he says he took his own life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what, dude? He shot himself.
Yeah.
And I'm reading this, and my date was like, you okay? And I started crying, dude. And I was like, what? I have a couple pictures of him, actually, from, like, when we were crazy skater kids. And I was like, I just found out, like, my friend's dead.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh my God, like, are you okay? She was, of course, like,
Yeah.
you know, oh my God, are you okay? Like, is there anything I can do?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, it was fine. But I was like, oh my God, like, I've never experienced this before. I don't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle it. And the word on the street was that he was depressed. And he had moved or something. He was expecting a child. And his mom was the one doing, like, all the Facebook stuff. And I was like, oh my God, like, what is this? What happened? And everyone was like, he was depressed. And I was like, what? Why? And I was like, dang. Like, it hurt.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? But it didn't make sense. And like he would leave his shirts and shoes at my place, and I had to take his skateboards, and I helped him his MySpace, and I was like, dude, your CD? I still have that CD. It means so much to me. So, Damien, man, rest in peace. We miss you. I'm sure you would have done great things.